Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. Today we are taking a look at the new L'Homme Ideal Parfum. L'Homme Ideal is a line that I have really enjoyed ever since it came out, but it's also a line that has been through some ups and downs. The fragrance line launched in 2014 and then had a new fragrance released every year after that up to 2020 when Guerlain L'Homme Ideal Extreme was released. And then 2021 came and nothing. To be fair, there was some stuff going on around the world around that time frame, but still nothing. Then 2022 came around and nothing. And it seemed like, is the line going away? But no. In 2023, they released L'Homme Ideal Platine Privé, which actually smelled quite similar to L'Homme Ideal Cologne, which was an earlier release that they had discontinued, but still. And now this year, we have L'Homme Ideal Parfum, which makes perfect sense because for whatever reason, Guerlain alternates every year. What I mean by that is they'll release a fragrance that's better for spring and summer, and then the next year, a fragrance that's better for fall and winter. Then the year after that, spring, summer. After that, fall, winter. And that's how this line has always been, which means assuming that we get a L'Homme Ideal flanker next year, it's gonna be one that's for spring and summer. Now this one is unfortunately not readily available anywhere in the US as of when I'm filming this video. I'm assuming at some point it's going to be like all the other ones, but I had to order mine from Europe, which means $30 shipping charge. Yes.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
And Guerlain's been busy this year. This isn't the only new big release that they have. They have a new Vetiver, a new Abbey Rouge, so yeah, they're pumping out a lot of stuff. Let's go ahead and get things kicked off by taking a look at the presentation. Here we have the front of the box. You have the name of the house, name of the fragrance, size and concentration, 100 ml Parfum. It is very simplified, I would say. Up top, you have the Guerlain logo, nothing on the sides. Little info on the back, including your ingredients, and on the bottom, your badge code and barcode. My badge code 4B01. And here we have the bottle, which is at this point kind of a standard Guerlain bottle. They've moved a lot of fragrances just into this bottle shape and style. I guess to save money and to simplify things. You have a little sticker on the front that has the name of the house, the fragrance, and the concentration. The cap has the Guerlain logo up top. It clicks into place. And on the bottom, a sticker with your badge code. There are a couple things that I'm not a huge fan of in relation to the presentation. Now, as I said, this bottle style, this is the style at this point, and the original L'Homme Ideal came in this style of bottle back 10 years ago. But most of those releases, the earlier releases in the line, were a little bit nicer looking. Now, it's not a huge deal, but they had like specific colors for each fragrance that went down the sides, and it just made it look a little more special. And then the cap coloration also would change depending on which fragrance it was. And the little sticker would be, different depending on which fragrance it was also. So each fragrance had a little bit more of a personality just from the presentation style. Same bottle, but those little differences made it look a little nicer, at least to me. I know there are people out there that prefer this style with just like the black cap, all the bottles looking the same, and then the little sticker right there. But to me, it just kind of all runs together, doesn't really set them apart as far as just the presentation. And one other thing that I've noticed with the newer style bottles is that this part, the little collar that goes down over the atomizer, doesn't feel quite as nice. It doesn't feel as, in place. So what I mean by that is sometimes when you take the cap off, it feels like this is not quite snug. And on my Eau de Parfum, my L'Homme Ideal Eau de Parfum, I have an older style bottle and also a newer style bottle. On the newer one, this little collar will just about pop all the way off when you take the cap off. So yeah, I know those are small things, they're quibbles. It's not like a huge deal at the end of the day, but I do feel like the presentation, just as far as the bottle goes, some of the things put into it, the overall look of it, is maybe a step down from where it used to be when the line started. And the boxes have been simplified also, which it doesn't look super appealing. Again, this is just my own personal taste. I know that some people I actually prefer this and think that this very, dialed back, more subtle presentation style looks better, looks classier overall. And I can respect that. If you think that the overall visage here is classier, that it looks nicer, that's fine. I just prefer those little pops of color and the overall, what I interpret to be slightly higher quality. All right, enough whining about bottles. Let's go ahead and do a couple sprays. Atomizer is solid. Now, we talked earlier about the fragrance line, how it's had some ups and some downs, and for a while, it was difficult to find L'Homme Ideal fragrances in the US, especially the Eau de Parfum and Extreme. Those were in high demand and difficult to find, which led to jacked up prices. But as time has gone on, it's been easier to find them, and that seems to be a part of the past. So the question here is L'Homme Ideal Parfum as good as the Eau de Parfum or Extreme? Basically, can it play with the big dogs in the line? When you first spray this fragrance on, you get hit with a nice little bit of sweetness and an almondy amaretto. And I am actually a huge fan of amaretto just in general. So having that in here and having it be actually perceptible as amaretto immediately scores points for me. So you have a little sweetness, booziness in there, but it's not going to be as sweet as the Eau de Parfum or Extreme. You can pick up a little bit of, that L'Homme Ideal, cool weather, sort of fruity sweetness here initially. But like I said, it's just not as pronounced. It's not as forward in the fragrance. And as this dries down, it fades away a lot quicker than it does in the other two. Again, referencing the Eau de Parfum and Extreme. The almond here also doesn't go as creamy as in some of the other L'Homme Ideal fragrances. It stays more in that liquor amaretto style, which that incorporation of a liquor or a boozy type aspect seems to be the inspiration in these new Parfum iterations from Guerlain, so that makes sense. The amaretto lingers for quite a while. It has a nice little touch of warmth to it, and that sweetness kind of comes and goes. Again, it's not as forward in the fragrance, but you get a little bit from the amaretto as it dries. Leather comes out pretty early on in the mid, and as it dries down, that leather kind of opens up more. It gets a touch smoky, almost feels like there's a bit of woodiness in there as well, which I would guess if we're going to tie that to a note in the note breakdown would be coming from the patchouli. The note breakdown here is very simplified. It has amaretto, patchouli, and musk along with leather. So not really a very in-depth note breakdown. They have definitely reined that in and kind of made it more modern for better or worse. And I will say also that L'Homme Ideal Parfum comes across very classy. I mean, in the opening, when it's a little bit sweeter and more boozy centric, you may not think that as much, but as this dries, it's a really classy masculine scent. I would say of all of the cool weather L'Homme Ideal fragrances, it would be the one that comes across the most elegant. The question though is this redundant? Is it better? Is it worse? Those things. That's what you really need to know. Well, I guess let's begin with how much I like it. So for me, it's awesome. It smells great, but I'm a big fan of the line. If you're not a big fan of the line, you very well may not like this one either. And that's because it is very clearly a L'Homme Ideal fragrance. So is it redundant? The argument could be made that it is. And this is something that happens in general across the L'Homme Ideal line sometimes. You have fragrances that are very clearly in the line and they are different than the other fragrances that have come before it, but not in a huge way. So Platine Privé, last year's release. That one, quite similar to L'Homme Ideal Cologne, which to be fair was discontinued, so you can't go buy it new anymore. But still, Platine Privé, when you smell that side by side with Cologne, you're like, oh, these are pretty close. They're not the exact same, but they're pretty close. And you can get that vibe with this one when you wear it side by side with, say, Extreme, for example. Is it the exact same as Extreme? No. When you smell side by side, you'll be like, okay, yeah, this one is doing this one's, a little bit sweeter, this one is a little boozier, this one is this one is that. You can pick up differences, but at the same time, you can pick up a lot of similarities. And I feel like that's kind of just how this line seems to be going, for better or worse. So while for me, this stuff is amazing and the amaretto is just like intoxicating, you want to go back and smell it again, spray it on again. That's the vibe that I get from it. If you're looking for something that's a marked departure, like a lot different than some of the other L'Homme d'Or fragrances for cooler weather, then you may get this, spray it on and go, okay, a lot of the same stuff going on here. So redundant, kind of, but it still smells great, so I don't actually care. Mainly because of the amaretto. It's mainly the amaretto and the leather, but mainly the amaretto. Which brings me to, is it as good as Extreme or the Eau de Parfum? Yes and no. As I said before, this one is a little more classy. It's maybe a little bit more mature. So if you're looking for that type of L'Homme d'Or, then this is gonna be better than those, or at least as good. But if you're looking for one that has more of that sweetness, that's going to potentially garner more compliments, more mass appeal, then those others might actually work out a little better for you. But this is at least as good as those for me. So I would say, is it as good as those? I know I said yes and no, but for me, just own personal taste, yes. Let's talk performance. It's really good. Lasts a long time, a really long time. So this is one of those times where it's a parfum and it really projects and lasts. I say that because sometimes there are parfum flankers that don't project as much, they're actually more subtle. They're more refined, more elegant. And while this one is more, as I said, grown up to an extent than, say, the Eau de Parfum, this projects and it lasts. It's not one of those ones that does it in a way that's more dialed in, dialed back. In terms of seasons, fall and winter, so what you would expect. And as far as daytime or evening use, it leans more toward evening use for sure. Oof, it smells great off a strip too. So those are my initial impressions on L'Homme d'Or Parfum. It's another welcome addition to the line. The only real con for this one, other than I wish the presentation style went back to the old style and gave it a little more flavor, a little more life, is it is treading on ground that has already been set. So it's common ground, it's been traveled before. You're maybe like walking a little bit off the trail, but the trail is still right there. It's not one of those things where you're like, I'm gonna carve my own path and figure something out on my own. You are walking the path and you go, oh, there's something cool over there. And you go, look at me, I'm an adventurer. That's kind of what's going on, but it still smells awesome. So there we go, L'Homme d'Or Parfum. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you later.